I was an 8-year-old boy observing the engineers at my father's company service center repairing solar inverters. This was the beginning of my journey as a maker. My first Lego Mindstorm kit, thank you Mom and Dad, and I started building toy robots. But wanted to build real things, so I started Googling. Hovercrafts, solar boats, go-karts, cars, boats, and a James Bond burning laser, which led me to Kip K and then Make magazine. Hey, from kits, now I started building things on my own, from Atari Punk consoles to automated gardening systems to 3D printers. Next stop, Arduino. Not knowing what it was, I Googled it. From building hardware to programming, wow. Soon, I quit formal schooling and started homeschooling, during which I emailed Professor Ramesh Raskar from MIT, participated in a hackathon organized by them. Here, I got back to developing a low-cost haptic feedback e-reader for the blind, later a stereo pupil tracker, and then a wearable ECG monitoring belt. Next, I met Web of Chhabra, saw Maker's Asylum being built and helped in whatever way I could. Yes, we built a makerspace. Up in the timeline, I want to solve more real-world problems. I dream of a possible goal of reducing the world's plastic by 2020, ensuring every child in the world has access to the digital world by 2025, and most importantly, every village in India has the basic resources for self-sustenance by 2030. These are dreams which I, as a maker, have, probably figuring out a way to achieve them step by step. My name is Angad Daryani. I'm 19 now, and I study electrical engineering at Georgia Tech in Atlanta. I'm back in India for summer and a project. So I'm going to talk to you about solve for $1 billion to make $1 billion, which means solve for 1 billion people to make $1 billion. A lot of you already have, but doesn't hurt to make another one. So growing up, I've built a lot of projects. I've worked on a few startups, and one quote really stuck with me, and I hate to bore you with it. The previous person said he won't bore you with slides and video. I'm sorry, I will. He said, Steve Jobs once said, everything around you that you call life was built by people no smarter than you, and you can change it, influence it, build your own things. And over time, I didn't really understand this, but now that I've started building my own companies and I've started building projects, it makes a lot more sense, where you see people use the things you're creating. So I drew a very ugly map of the things we've done in the past, and I think the video gave you a good highlight. I've had a few startups. I've been lucky to work with MIT, IIT Bombay, present to Dr. Kalam, Mr. Ratan Tata, and we've done a lot of social projects so far. As of today, I've had 3 startups, 2 social innovation projects, 18 plus large projects, and spoken to over 40,000 people. These are very small numbers for you, but like I'm 19 so far. Right now, I am my startup, and we are working every single day to help India breathe cleaner, healthier air. I started this project last year at my lab in the US. We tried a simulated test in the lab, and we could capture carbon in a Ziploc bag. This is what we breathe in 1 minute, by the way, outside. And then I came back to India this summer, and we've tested it in Mumbai on my terrace. And we're capturing a lot of air pollutants within 2 minutes in a 3-foot tube. I can't show you more. My lawyer's going to be pissed about it, but this is as much as we can say since we're in patent process. So how do we as startups approach these large-scale problems and come up with solutions to them? And you'll see over time why I'm relating this to marketing. So we look around ourselves, we find major problems, and as techies, we come up with elegant solutions to these problems, solutions that are scalable, low cost, and work in every surrounding. We raise grant money like we're doing right now. We hired the right skilled people to 10x our project. We tested in actual surroundings at scale, and then we implement it in the real world. This is my approach and what I'm working towards every day for the next 20 years. All the stuff you see in green, we've done or we're doing. The logos you see are companies that are already there and not scaling, but they're still there, and that's how we're going to approach the future. And I think these three lines that you see need to happen in parallel for a country to grow, irrespective of what political people we have running the country. So there's education that needs to change, technology that needs to evolve, and rural development that needs to take place, all three together for a country to evolve in the right way. So I'm just 19 years old. If I can work on these problems and solutions, just imagine what you giants can do. So how do you take on these challenges and create future brands and companies? Because I think every day we think about how to make a brand survive, how to generate more revenue, but if you can think about what the brand should look like in the next 20 years, even if it's completely unrelated to what you do, you could be making soaps now and think about making planes later, but you have the capabilities to make that happen. I'm not here to preach, don't get me wrong, just to share what I've learned through my startups and interacting with thousands of young people our age in the US and here who are looking for jobs, companies, or starting their own things. A few learnings from my journey. It's weird I'm saying this as a techie, but technology isn't the goal, but merely a tool. And what you use this tool to accomplish and create matters a lot more. And sometimes when we get very big and successful, we become complacent. We get used to what we're doing and don't take up big challenges or big risks like Elon Musk does to a certain extent. It takes about 80 to 100 hours of work every week for many, many months to do something bold and get far ahead with things. It's sometimes very important to disconnect completely, even though we're very accomplished, to start as a beginner, to start as a nobody, because that means you have to struggle every single day to make something happen. And when you're in that situation, you'll come up with the best solutions. What you did yesterday doesn't matter. It's going to shape your experiences, but shouldn't slow you down or your ability to learn very quickly. And at big companies or startups, it's very important to learn very quickly every single day to be able to implement things and solve problems. You don't want to solve problems for a few hundred people, but for the next 5 billion people. As Bill Gates says, we're going to stabilize around 11 billion or so as population. So that's something we should keep in mind. In India, especially when it comes to recruiting, we're big on college brands and company brands of people who've worked at these big places. My interns, who are almost twice my age at my previous startups, have gone on to work for companies like Tesla. And right now, I've recruited people from BMW, CERN, Philips, MIT, IIT Bombay. And I can promise you, none of these people have fancy grades or fancy accolades before they were at these places. So even if we're hiring 1,000 people, it's very important to not be conservative and take out the time to actually understand the team and thought process. Because in startups, you'll see that people who don't earn such large pay packages actually perform and work 100 hours a week to make things happen. So your team will make all the difference. So how do we create these future industries that I'm talking about? Don't we already have too much of everything? This is in the past few years working in the tech space, having friends in Silicon Valley. I gave up jobs at Facebook and Harvard Medical to do my own startup and to try to clean India's air. So my friends work there, and this is what we've gathered from people who work at Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, Tesla, and all these big companies. These are just 8, but these are general big ideas that we have to come up with solutions for. We want one centralized platform for all our tech. Right now, it's too many things. We have an Android phone, we have an iPhone, we have Facebook, LinkedIn, all very disjoint social media platforms. You have too much clutter of data. How do we get it in one neat format? That's a big challenge that all these big companies work towards now. Healthcare needs to be easier, cheaper, and faster. At home, if someone could come to your house and use a mobile device to do whatever test they need to do, and you have automated diagnostics running immediately, I think that's the future of tech. And this is not something from movie. We actually built projects, and we have videos on it online that you can look up. Ambient sensing is something I worked on earlier last year. Nowadays, we enter too much information into our devices. People want to disconnect from the online world now because it's getting too much. So how do you do this without being creepy? You want a device learning about you while you're doing and living your everyday life. It's a very new psychological trick used at all big companies. They're working towards it every day. This is something you may want to look into here in India. People want more experiences, more reality about whatever they're going to buy or use. And even if it's unrelated to what your company does, if you can create that experience for them, they will remember your brand. A cleaner, fitter, cheaper world. They want to be connected to everyone, yet disconnected, not social media. They want an education, not a degree. It's a very stark difference between the two. And they want to feel human again. They want to be part of the real world, not a digital world. Digital world can be a subset. So it's very important to look at these psychological large-scale aspects and then see how we can evolve our products to fit these. Innovation, like we know, is at the heart of every big company. And from what I understand, it requires a lot of creativity if you want millions of people to use your products. And in India especially, who has this clarity and creativity? I think a very small percentage of today's youth do. And fortunately, that's about a few 100 million people. So we're still good when it comes to talent and creativity. There's a lot of untapped potential. And in other parallel good news, it may take you more than a lifetime to get a green card in the US. So we're going to have all these fresh new graduates from top schools in the US coming back to India looking for jobs. It would be terrible if we can't capitalize on these opportunities. So you have a huge talent base here, and you already have more talent coming from the US. You have a lot more potential to tap into. This is what I've learned from my startup and interacting with people, and this is something you could potentially do if it suits you, on how do you engage this new talent which is coming. People don't want to work long hours. People don't want to just work for money. From what I've recruited from all these big companies, people want to work for a cause. And out of 70 odd people, we recruited about 16. So how do you bring this talented crowd together that is very independent and creative? There's two ways to do it. One is to change few things about our companies, and others to invest in them as big companies and help them grow and 10x it. So a few things that I've heard from my friends who worked in India or who are working in US is they need a lot of respect, and they deserve that because they are going to be the ones driving your innovation and deciding the future of what your company could look like. And this is not very common here in India at companies I've seen. Let them work on and give them projects that actually have a tangible impact in the world, because I feel that is what motivates them to work very hard, even if it's optional and they're doing it out of choice. They need freedom and chances to try and fail. At companies, we're often not rewarding failure, but that failure actually helps us not make the same mistakes again and saves us millions of dollars in the future. And you need to make them feel included and welcomed and heard, and that's what I've seen at big companies like Tesla and Google. That's why people want to work there. They leave their country and go and work there. So this is one aspect of it, and second is investing in startups. There's thousands of them, and 90% of them fail. So how do you pick the ones that are not going to fail? You invest in projects and initially give grants, and you give grants to people who are taking on personal risks, who are giving up certain things in college, who are giving up grades, who are giving up jobs to try to do new and bold things, because you know that's the kind of project that will actually potentially has a higher chance of succeeding than the others. You want to invest in startups who are not here with the idea of making money. They will make money, but to create a revolutionary product. This is visible only through their actions and not their pitch or word. So observation over time is very important. And where do you find all these people in India? It's very hard because we are 1.3 billion people. How do you sort through this and find the right talent and people? So I think we have started a makerspace called Makers Asylum. It operates in Andheri. We have thousands of members. There's one in Delhi. There's a few other spaces in Bangalore, Hyderabad. And from what I visit there and see every day, there's people who come out of choice and work all day to build something, and they really hope and dream that thousands of people could use their products that they're building. So lastly, solve for $1 billion to make $1 billion, and it would be amazing if we could not think of how to make a brand survive, but how we want to shape it in the future. Thank you. That's my time.